Good afternoon, everyone. Please, you guys already know. I saw Pete starting to type already. So good afternoon, everybody. Philippa as well. Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to our team's updates and key functionalities to expect. Quite honored to have Tony Nunn. Hi, Donna. Hi, Kenny. Haven't seen you for a while. We've got Tony Nunn, and while we're preparing all that, please say hello and tell me how the weather is where you are. I mean, you guys know how I start this, so I'm video streaming to you from Aberdeen, and we had snow this morning. That was so strange. So tell us where you are, and please give us a shout. Oh, thank you. Chilly in Edinburgh. Oh gosh. Well,
is it ever anything different than chilly in Edinburgh?
Right. So I'm just welcoming everybody. So this is one the second or the third last one, because I'm coordinating with Pete Wadley on a PRS and some other updates as well. So but certainly for our technology, for Teams and for Microsoft 365, the two events that I have posted are the two last ones we have for the year. And of course, when we end the year, I will ask everybody about what they think would support you guys for next year. It would be really good to find out, what types of webinars give me a wish list once we get the surveys out of the things that you would like for 2021, and we will try and make that happen. Hi, Claire. So anyway, without much further ado, you're not here for me, you're here to hear Tony. So please welcome Tony Nunn. And if you are very active in the Microsoft Tech community for Teams, Tony Nunn is quite active there. He's quite a respected SME by Microsoft on intelligent communication, and Teams just happens to be one of them as well. So please welcome Tony.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you are at this present moment in time. So today's session, and first and foremost, let me just notify you, if you hear a growling or a grunting in the background to my presentation, or even a squeak, I apologize. I have a foot-high dog who demands my attention, but for the next hour to an hour and a half or so, she's going to have to share me with you guys. So today's presentation, what we're going to go through is some of the latest feature functionality releases from Microsoft in relation to Teams, some of which will obviously be native in nature to Microsoft Teams itself, some of which will be a broad span across some of the other portfolio stack areas of the Microsoft 365 product range. What we're also going to do is, as this is an IRMS event, we're going to extend some of the later slides to cover some other areas of release functionality to Microsoft 365 that are more pertinent to data retention, management, and control. Yeah, hopefully you find some informative data coming out of this presentation. Some of the features that we'll be talking about, you may well have already seen. You may well have had them as preview capabilities within your Office 365 tenant already, but they have now gone into general feature availability, so consequently there is more of an emphasis and focus upon them. So with that, we'll press ahead. So the agenda today, I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about me. I'm not going to do anything salesy today. I'm not here to push HPE in any way, shape or form, although we are there to assist you in any which capability that we can. We'll talk about some of the features relating to Teams in regards of meeting and calling capability, what's changed or what's new within chat and collaboration. what has been specifically released around the platform as a whole, and what's coming next. And within that, what's coming next, as I say, we'll talk about some of the further scaled items around Microsoft 365 control for data. And then at the end of the session, given that we've got an hour and a half, and I honestly don't think this is going to take an hour and a half, we've got time for questions and answers. Hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions that you've got. But yeah, with that, let's plow ahead. So for you guys out there who haven't met or heard from me previously, and I know there are a number of you on the call today who have. My name's Tony Nunn. I'm the UK Intelligent Communication Technical Lead for HPE's Advisory and Professional Services Department. So all of the consulting service side. I also work very closely with our global teams in creating the portfolio of offerings around Microsoft 365 as a whole. And also I work as a pre-sale engagement technician. So I will, in the event that you have any leverage sales opportunities, come and talk to you guys, not just from a pure salesy perspective, but also from a technical perspective. I'm an adoption specialist, so know about the challenges that you as clients probably envisage and expect to come across when rolling out new Microsoft 365 technologies. And from a personal perspective, just a few things about me. I'm a Formula One lover. I really do like watching it, so I was pretty glad that it was one of the sports that has managed to evade COVID as a whole. I like to travel. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker. Like everybody else, travel this year is just a write-off. So, you know, this is the new medium from which that we will, for the foreseeable future, be working until the cavalry of the vaccine comes over the hill. And I'm an NFL fan. I used to be a soccer fan or a football fan, but if you can understand my accent and you know where I am in the country, you'll probably understand why I'd never talk about football nowadays. My contact details are on the right of the presentation there, my HPE email address, my LinkedIn profile, and my Twitter account. And for all those who've previously been on presentations that I've run, as I always say, my Twitter feed fundamentally is all things Microsoft. So yeah, by all means, feel free to follow me if you wish. So with that, let's crack into the presentation itself. So what's new in meetings and callings? What have Microsoft, over the course of October in particular, released to Microsoft Teams? So this is one of those features that, as I say, as soon as I present it, multiple people will generally say, oh, we've already seen this, we've used it. Live captions with speaker attribution. So essentially the ability that during a meeting of any nature, or even a one-on-one session, be it ad hoc, point-to-point, or multi-person, the ability through more options to actually delve in and actually see the transcript of the individual speaker in real time and in the language of your choice during their presentation. It provides you with a more inclusive capability of bringing you into the meeting, but also in the event that from an audio perspective or even a video perspective, you find difficulty in actually gleaning and taking in what the speaker themselves are actually notifying you of, the ability to follow the context of a conversation or follow the context of a meeting whilst in it in real time through a transcript, through captioning, is a great way of just fundamentally getting over those barriers of language and of accent and regional variation. Now, as I say, this has been around in some capacity, quite frankly, for a little while now. Certainly in recordings, it was prevalently more used so that individuals could follow the transcript of a recording and find key search criteria to define specific words or app mentions that related to them. So again, something just that Microsoft have utilized to assist individuals who are working more and more in a day-to-day basis at arm's length from one another, but also trying to make them a more inclusive cohort. Spotlighting. How many times have you been in a meeting or a call whereby there are numerous representations or tiles of individuals across the entirety of the presentation? Now, Microsoft, over the course of the last few months, have actually introduced more and more tiles within calls. At last count, the fully functioning one was 9, but they are actually increasing that to 49. So it becomes not so much a Brady Bunch, but more a case of Zulus coming over the hill. So this capability, again, within the More Options facility, gives you the ability to spotlight an individual speaker, giving more emphasis on that particular individual and providing you with the ability of not actually losing track and foresight as to everybody else in the meeting. Now, there are pros and cons in relation to this feature as far as I see it. The pro, again, the ability to see emphasis of an individual speaker. However, it's not dynamic enough in the sense that as somebody else then consequently takes over voice control on the call, it will actually flick across to a subsequent speaker. So don't just expect that capability. You as an individual control who you're spotlighting, whether that be A, the speaker themselves, or B, somebody else in a presentation who maybe actually be presenting content during the call itself. Again, a nice feature. What Microsoft did within the meeting policy control provision within the admin console is they have now introduced the ability to allow you to, on demand, mute attendees within your meetings. I seem to recall, and this is extending this capability I'm going to talk about, I seem to recall being on a presentation with an IRMS event not so long ago, whereby just inadvertently during a meeting, someone accidentally shared their screen, purely because the options within the meeting policies did not prevent the speaker or the actual presenter from declining individuals in the meeting the ability to just automatically share their screen and subsequently take control of the meeting. Microsoft have acknowledged and recognized that these are issues in meetings and have now consequently given you the ability to introduce a mute all capability, so that on the raising of a hand within the meeting itself, you have the ability to subsequently unmute that particular individual, allow them into the conversation, and then again mute them once the question's been asked. Control of the meeting as a whole. It doesn't provide you with, it provides you with the capability of preventing a free-for-all within a meeting. Again, this feature has been there in some sort of preview capability. I've noticed it for around about the last 2 to 3 months, but this is now GA. This is generally available in all tenants. And again, something that we as an organization, me as a presenter, find very, very beneficial when actually going through sessions such as this. Microsoft Whiteboard. Now, automatically you're going to go, Whiteboard's been in Teams for ages. Yes, Whiteboard has been in Teams for ages. Read-only Whiteboard has not. So again, what they've done is presented you with an ability to actually determine which individuals that you're collaboratively working with have the capability of actually dynamically within the whiteboard introducing content onto the whiteboard. You can decline or acknowledge and accept individuals on a per user basis or a multi-user basis to give you an element again of control within Whiteboard. Now, Whiteboard has been something that from a technology perspective, quite frankly, hasn't really been developed that much as a whole since Skype for Business on-premise was around, maybe even since Link prior to it was around. But they've acknowledged again that they need to do more development and production work around the usage of features such as Whiteboard, Power Automate, and other flowing products that allow you as an individual to collaboratively work with your users at arm's length. The whole purpose of whiteboard capability in reality is giving you that forethought or that capability whereby in an open space such as this today, you can just scribble, draw, write, you know, one copy note onto it, whatever. It's not for everyone. Don't get me wrong. It is a brainstorming platform, but some users prefer to utilize other capabilities that, again, are available through the Microsoft App Store platform rather than the inherent out-of-the-box solution that Microsoft themselves provide. Now, I have seen mention that in regards of read-only mode for Whiteboard, that this is a licensing add-on function, and that it's not something that is out of the box available to certain licensing structures within the Microsoft stack. So you might find that as an E1 or an E3 user, you don't actually get that read-only capability. But again, it has been released. Microsoft generally changed their mind repeatedly in regards of licensing of specific modalities within the product. So just keep an eye on it. I can hear lots and lots of that, notifications of questions or chats in the background. I know Marie is monitoring this. Obviously, as I'm presenting at the moment, I can't see those. So if there's anything of relevance or questions that are pertinent to a specific slide that I'm presenting at that moment in time, we'll pick those up at the end of the session and address those, just for notification. So, meeting and calling. Meeting and calling recording capability was previously provided to you by Stream. So out of the box, you would record a meeting. That particular meeting would be held in your Stream repository, if assuming you were licensed in Office 365, and consequently within the Stream console, you would then either have the ability to directly share that video to individuals, depending on your internal and external B2B provisioning, or alternatively, you would be able to download the video to your local repository, be it your local desktop or your local OneDrive, and consequently share the information from there. Now that's great, and didn't really provide anybody with that much of an issue. However, what they've done is they've removed the necessity for a middleman in regards of having to go to Stream to do all of this. So should you want to change the transcript of a recording, you can still consequently import it into Stream, do your manipulation and editing of any recording transcript, and then subsequently download it again. However, the actual repository and storage center for your recordings now, depending on the policy settings within your tenancy, is that it will now automatically be held either directly within your OneDrive repository, if it's a locally recorded session, or if it's a channel meeting, it will be held in the SharePoint repository relating to the Teams channel itself. Again, a lot more clear, a lot more concise. Consequently, it is applicable to the same permission sets that you would naturally relate to standard SharePoint permission sets and control. So with that, let's have a look and see what's new in chat and collaboration. Offline presence. Now, again, something that was previously there and customizable through Skype for Business, but wasn't introduced as part of the transition into Teams itself, was the ability to take yourself offline. Traditionally, you tended to find that most users will either put themselves on Do Not Disturb or appear away so that it automatically refreshes and takes them out of that period. However, as you can see here now, we have that customizable window by which we can actually predetermine that users will not be notified of our status during a 2, 3, 4, whatever's tailored to you as an individual. Now, it's great in regards of you providing end users or peers or colleagues with a notification that you're not online. The assumption being that they will then consequently leave you to get on with your day-to-day activity. However, there is a reality to this as well. I have in numerous occasions found myself that because Teams is not just a point-to-point in real-time communication and collaboration tool, it is a persistent tool, meaning that even when I'm offline, if individuals message me or chat with me directly through Teams, it will still retain that chat for me coming back into the call. It will actually notify you in real time. So you can still find yourself, even though being offline, being bombarded by notifications and alerts that someone is trying to communicate with you. So yeah, it's a great facility, and I can understand the benefits of it. Me personally, I think I'd rather put myself as do not disturb or appear away, rather than actually setting it as not online. So with that in mind, I'll come to another feature in 2 seconds that relate more to presence capability. So templating. So previously, we obviously had the ability, again, through the administration console, to define a number of predetermined templates that relate to specific verticals, be it health, financial, government, that might be specific to the generation and creation of a team. Now, what Microsoft have done is they've released a number of custom templates, giving you that more granular capability, so that, as you can see in these demonstrations here, you are provided with some predefined settings for your team. So, for instance, you might have a team that relates to rights management. So consequently, within rights management, you might want that team to be private on the basis that it's control and compliance and governance within your organization. You might want that to define that it actually covers a number of predefined Yammer, SharePoint, or application settings that you previously would share as part of a defined template for a team in that environment. All of this is customizable, not just purely from the admin console as it previously was, but you can now define this as an end user within your desktop client also. It's important you recognize that the majority of the new features that have been released are only applicable to desktop client capability. They are not applicable to either mobile or Mac capability in regards of, or even browser capability in regards of what has been released. That will come downstream. So some of the things that we'll talk about today, and we've mentioned, for instance, the SharePoint one I've just talked about in regards of Teams recording. Teams recording, you can actually do the recording and everything and store it on your OneDrive or SharePoint repository directly from your desktop client. What you can't do is you can't do that from a browser client, and you can't do that from a mobile client. Both of those only give you the review or view capability. So new file sharing experiences. Now, this for me was something that was needed massively. How many times have you gone into a file and within a team conversation had to download that specific file either directly from your OneDrive repository or from SharePoint, and then use the share capability from within that particular interface, rather than just simply right-clicking, as seen in the demonstration here, and shared to a specific group of individuals, be it externally, internally, or as I said there, to a group of specific people. Also giving you the ability to have the same share edit capability. So for instance, I might want to be able to share the file externally, but prevent editing of that specific file, or actually prevent any download capability of that file. All of those extended share features that were previously only available from within the SharePoint or OneDrive platforms are now fully functional and available directly from within Teams. Again, the idea being that Teams is providing you with a single pane of glass interface to give you access to everything that you do within the Microsoft 365 stack. No longer do you have to drop out of the interface into a browser or another user interface for a different application within the stack itself, be it SharePoint or be it OneDrive. So again, a nice feature, something that it's been lacking and needing for some considerable time, but again, something that increases productivity and performance. So we talked about the ability to put yourself in offline in regards of presence. But then, as I said, one of the consequences of that is you will still receive invasive notifications and alerts that people are actually still trying to contact you. What they've done is they've now released extensible capability within the settings pane so that you can determine and customize individual sets of notification alerts. Now, some of these were already previously there. But as you can see, we can now actually granularly dictate as to whether or not we see chats or messages, whether the only thing that we're interrupted with is calling. We have the ability to determine all on, all off, at mentions, at replies, or just purely customization. Again, something which was released in preview capability, so you may well have seen some of these features, but has now gone fully into general availability. I haven't, as I say, I'm not seeing the questions coming up in the chat window in the background. One of the things that I'm assuming might have come up is that you haven't seen this in your settings page. There is an update client feature within your settings page. Now, by default, the Teams client should intuitively interrogate the Microsoft update service to see that you're running the latest version every 15 minutes. If, however, your organization or company has a policy in place that blocks that provisioning, you may find that you manually have to update the client. I have come across numerous occasions where, in the case of OneDrive and Teams syncing for offline usage and capability, that that sync function does not work. And it's purely down to the fact that, as I say, the update provisioning service is not being contacted correctly. So consequently, we've had to manually go in and update both the OneDrive client and the Teams client to get that functionality to work properly. So just be conscious of the fact that that is maybe why you either haven't or aren't seeing some of these features at this present moment in time. The updating of the SharePoint capability. So we were always able to share from a tab a specific SharePoint page. But what we can do now is they've extended that feature so that we can actually add numerous SharePoint capabilities from within a single tab. The ability for us then consequently to actually increase the ability by which we no longer have to go and have multiple tabs extending across the interface as a whole. And again, almost dictating that you will lose the ebb and flow of the usage of the Teams interface. It's a nice to have. I actually like it. Some people I know who've tried using it don't like the simplistic fact that in essence, you have multiple SharePoint access tabs within a single embedded pane. I guess it's pure preference, quite frankly. But for me, it's something that I like. I know a number of SharePoint developers that I've worked with have utilized this at great lengths, and say it's a much needed feature. But personally, you know, it's something that has now been released. Again, this is not just purely a case with SharePoint. They're doing further extensible capability around Yammer also. So again, trying to make that whole ethos of a multi-pane communication format that Teams in reality isn't, available to both organization-wide and cohort-based individuals of groups. So they've updated, as we said, some of the interface capabilities around SharePoint, OneDrive, calling, meeting, and collaboration as a whole. But what have they done to the actual platform itself? So how many times have you gone into the store or app catalog within your organization and thought, you know what, it wouldn't it be nice if it was branded with your own proprietary branding and not only held a list of the Microsoft-enabled applications that have been accepted within your organization's admin console, but also held specifically the either bespoke or business as usual proprietary applications that you yourselves as developers had generated. This is now all capable. You can brand your own interface within the app catalog. Again, some people will say, yeah, that's great, but why? It's something that, you know, doesn't actually benefit me in any way, shape, or form. Quite frankly, it is providing you with an ethos of thinking that the tenant itself is aligned directly to you as a business and to you as an individual. The app catalog, for all the majority of us will rarely venture into it, contains numerous updated technical developer apps that, quite frankly, extend the features and functionality that Microsoft themselves provide out of the box. Now, Planner being one of those tools. Planner is great, but you know, Trello's in there. The ability to include some of your SAP or CRM based applications that you have used the APIs to develop and publish from directly within the actual interface itself. So again, all of which have been requested on the user voice platform. And if you don't know what user voice is, we'll touch upon that during the call. But again, Microsoft have you know, answered all of the requests that the individuals out there in the world have asked for, and this was repeatedly asked for. Personalized branding of the app catalog. So we've talked about preview features, how some of the things that I've demonstrated or displayed today have been available within your interface or your tenant for some considerable time. Now, how irritating is it when during the preview of an application, suddenly it's withdrawn without any notification to you, the end user? So what Microsoft have done is they've created a preview policy by which administrators now can determine whether or not preview functionalities are actually widely available to end users or just to a specific subset of pilot or beta users. So this policy, again, is enabled at the admin console level. You as end users will not have access to it, but this again could be one of the reasons and the rationale as to why going forward, as features are released for preview, you no longer see them. Again, me personally, I think this was needed. I think that on far too many numerous occasions have Microsoft just essentially used you as the guinea pig in regards of all of their feature testing. I know internally within our organization, Together Mode, which I'm hoping you've seen in meetings, was repeatedly used by subsections of the attendee list within a meeting. So it would actually cause quite a bit of confusion as to some people saying, well, I can see Maria sitting next to Tony and somebody else saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And it kind of loses the central focus of a meeting itself. When you're supposed to be concentrating on the context or the core of what your meeting is about or the presentation that's on the screen itself, instead you're playing with feature functionality in the background. We've all done it. I myself have done it. But this polices that ability going forward. So what's coming next? Now, some of these features are specific to teams. We will touch upon things in relation to data loss prevention in a second, but I just wanted to call some of these out. Now, this is one that has allegedly been released as of the beginning of this week and is starting to appear in a number of tenants of individuals that I've spoke to over the course of the last few days. Noise suppression in Teams meetings. The ability for you to, as an end user and not at a central administration platform, determine what the background noise capability is and suppress all of that unnecessary background noise. So for instance, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, my 1-foot dog, which has now fallen asleep on the floor next to me, the ability to cut all of that out. Now, I've updated my client today to see if this had been released into our tenant, and it hasn't as yet. So I do know it is in general rollout. However, I do have a number of development tenants, and I have seen it appear in one of those development tenants. Again, noise suppression's great. It's really good, especially if, as with me, you might switch between the usage of a headset, as I'm doing today, which in some regards does actually cut out noise suppression anyway, or if you just have a standard PC mic and speakers. So again, a nice to have feature. It does require some tweaking. I know it says auto default there, but when I've used it in my test and development tenant, I found that the auto setting didn't actually work as I anticipated, and required some leverage in regards of me tuning it and tailoring it for my specific needs. But it is a very good system, and it's more applicable, I guess, more to Teams rooms than it is specifically to individual end users. So some roadmap announcements, further features coming down the line. How many times have you, especially in today's current climate, been in meetings in Teams and somebody has said, well, I want to join that meet, but I haven't got Teams, I've got Zoom. So can we consequently have a Zoom meeting, or can we consequently have a WebEx meeting? So what Microsoft have done, traditionally they released the video interoperability service, and that would allow you to create a conferencing bridge that gave you the ability to have a variety of different agnostic platforms working in one central platform. So if you hosted the meeting on Teams, the conference bridge gave external provisioning users using Zoom, WebEx, or some of the Google technologies, the ability to proprietarily join your meetings. Now, that's great, and it was, again, a necessity for you subsequently to introduce that conference bridge functionality into Teams as a whole. But what happens if you haven't got that in place and you need that ability now? Especially today, we're talking about being in almost in a day-to-day feature release need for end users. I might be working on a solution whereby I can't go to a customer site and consequently implement an infrastructure allowing me to provision that capability. So what Microsoft have done is they've released Direct Join. And Direct Join allows WebEx and Zoom meetings in particular the ability to use web-embedded functionality so that they can join almost through the web interface for Teams, and a native Teams meeting. I haven't tried it yet. I do know it's coming. I have seen it in practice, and in test, and it does work very, very well. Again, this works more so when used with either a Teams room solution or with a desktop client. I haven't seen it functioning in a mobile client environment as yet. But it's just, further proof that Microsoft are listening to people out there and are further developing features that provision the ability for irrelevant of Microsoft adoption, Zoom adoption, Cisco WebEx adoption, the ability for individuals at arm's length to work irrelevant of where they are and what platform they're using. We're an IRMS event. So no IRMS event would be complete without mention of data loss protection or prevention. So what's new with data loss prevention? So DLP is not new to the Office 365 stack. It's been there some considerable time, specifically around SharePoint and around email. But it was only introduced probably back in July time for Microsoft Teams. But again, it was done probably as a result of the current COVID crisis. in a fashion. It wasn't done with the ability to control numerous features that were already available in email and SharePoint in the same way that Teams required them. So for instance, the ability to give you sensitivity label appreciation. So on the 10th of November, Microsoft announced that those features were now available. So the ability to utilize sensitivity labels, both internally and externally, with from within Teams. So DLP has been extended in that regard. But also what they've done is they've made it a more familiar experience. So they haven't introduced a platform. We talked about the sharing capability within the file share experience. They haven't introduced a platform which is different in presentation to that of the familiar one you had within SharePoint and email. It is the same standard across the board, irrelevant of which interface you're using, be it standard Office 365 or Office product stack, or be it any of the extended ones such as SharePoint, OneDrive, or Teams. They all have that familiar look and feel around them. So as you can see here, another example of that, the ability to apply a sensitivity label, be it confidential or encrypted, and apply that to a specific file so that that alert notification is generated and provisioned not just purely in the desktop interface, but also in the edge. So again, you're seeing that same leveraged presentation of the application of DLP or sensitivity labels, irrelevant of the form factor, operating system, or platform that you're using. And they've also increased the ability to audit and track DLP within the Compliance Center. So as you can see here now, and again, you'll notice in brackets in preview, we now have a much more intuitive and representative alerting screen within the Compliance Center. So we can determine the specific level of DLP policy which was met, the status of that ongoing investigation around the policy alert itself, and we can delve further into the individual in question, the file that was actually extracted or attempted to be shared, and the policy label that notified us of the alert. So again, increasing that leveraged look and feel for administrators and for managers around how the implementation of DLP management is going on. You'll notice there as well endpoint DLP settings. We are going to talk about endpoint capability in regards to the further features that have been released around DLP endpoint management. So essentially, we've talked about the increase in sensitivity label awareness. With DLP endpoint management, we can now also determine from not just which application we're sharing particular content and providing DLP around, but also the specific endpoint, IP address, and type of device which is permissible to access that content. So Intune obviously is an integral part of some of these endpoint regard features. It's not just simplistically a case of applying the DLP policy for a given IP address range or operating system type. It works again hand in hand or hand in glove with a number of the other stack provisions. Now, these are all available within the E3 licensing stack of Microsoft 365. They are not something that need to be extended as part of the larger Microsoft Information Protection suite of products within E5. So you might find that, again, as these are further released, that you already have the licensing provision in place to support this rollout. Now, I did say that I didn't anticipate this was going to take an hour or an hour and a half, and I was very, very right. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the presentation because I want to utilize the remaining time that we've got together to go over questions or any requests that we've had.
Yep. So Tony, if you put yourself in the middle there, we're going to put you on a spotlight, and I will start with a question from Jason. Okay, here we go, Jason. I'm asking Tony. So this is very technical. From a technical point of view, what does the Common Data Service MS Teams enable? Is it just important if you are using Power Apps, or is it essential for Teams only use?
No, it's more from a Power Apps perspective. So the data server itself is obviously part of the communication protocol platform for Teams. That said, as I've said on numerous presentations that I've done about Teams, you've got to remember that Teams is an umbrella. And consequently, all of the spokes of Teams are essentially other parts of the Microsoft 365 stack, be it Azure Groups, be it email for calendaring and share busy information, be it OneDrive and SharePoint. So consequently, the actual data service itself is integral, not just to Teams, but to also Reliant services.
Sorry, can you turn on your camera so we can see you?
Yep.
Just look at you in the eyes. That's the best way to do it. So, Jason, does that provide you with the answer you require? Yeah. So Tony, Jason is saying that sounds and so it sounds like it's worth enabling it. Gosh, we may have lost Tony because I asked him to turn on his videos. Okay. What happened to Tony? Okay, let me put myself back. Okay, as we wait for Tony to come back. Tony? Anyway, Jane, with regards to the question of Jane Profit, and this is quite an interest with records managers now as they're realizing the difference between chats and conversations. Tony?
Yeah, can you hear me, Maria?
Oh, there we go. Okay, so yeah. So Jason first, and then I'll come back to Jane.
Okay.
So what Jason is saying, that sounds what he has concluded. So it sounds like it's worth enabling it.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So now Jane Profit's question, and we go to the controversial one, Tony, because this has always been a source of headache for a lot of people. So the chats. So
yes.
Does all the chat conversations go as soon as you close a team channel? So we know, So if it's a chat outside the team, it's handled differently. If it's the post, meaning conversations in the channel, so you see it as a post, it's handled differently. So Jane, I'm not so sure what you mean by you close a team channel.
So what I'm guessing, and I could be wrong, is if you subsequently make a team redundant or the channel redundant within a team, do you subsequently lose all of the content of that persistent chat or conversation that was previously retained within that channel? Is that what you're referring to, Jane?
She said, I meant conversations in the channels. Okay, yep. So she says conversations in the channels. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, it works on the basis of the same as if you make a retention policy around a team and consequently the team itself becomes redundant and dies. You have, in general terms, a 90-day in most organizations' eyes retention window for a redundant or lessly used team, at which point it essentially goes into tombstoning. And then you have 30 days within which an administrator can re-enable that team, and all of the conversations within that team are subsequently made available again. If you want to retain just purely the conversations from within a team at the point of disabling the team itself or deleting the team itself, there are a number of mechanisms to allow you to either export the transcript of the conversations, or alternatively to actually back up the team itself. I'm not even going to start saying specific vendors, but let's just say there are multiple vendors on the market who will address and work to retain and save all of that data and back it up.
Okay, so Jane says, thank you, Tony. Okay, then I'll go back to Emma Wallace's question. So I think I've answered, but just to be sure that it is correct. When an upload of a document is added to a post in a channel, so this is in a channel, so it goes to a SharePoint, the SharePoint site behind it, and there is already the same document stored in files area of MS Teams channel, does it recognize a duplicate document and add it to the original document in the files area? So my response is, and I will coordinate with you, I think it would recognize it already in the SharePoint side of the channel and ask you if you want to replace it. So I am not so sure, Tony. Yeah.
It does. It does. It asks you if you want to replace it. It's the same as copying any file to a standard SharePoint repository. If the file is already there, it will either add an integer to it, so it might become bracket 1 version of or equivalent of the file, or it'll ask you, do you want to replace the existing file?
Okay, so another question from Philippa. Ooh, there we go. Can you explain where the chat is stored? Is chat stored in Exchange? Okay, Tony?
No, it's not. It's not. No, the chats are stored in a separate repository area. In the case of you as an end user, your personal one-on-one chats are actually stored within your team's data folder. But in the case of channels themselves, they're actually stored within a data flow area within the tenant itself. So it's not stored, no longer is it automatically stored in your conversation history of your Exchange inbox. Now, that said, when you create a team and a channel, a subsequent SharePoint site and a subsequent Exchange mailbox is created on the back of the team itself. So consequently, when I say it's not stored within Outlook or Exchange, it is in some ways, but it's stored centrally in the team mailbox, Outlook and Exchange. So consequently, it's only able to be accessible to administrators or owners of that team who have access to that mailbox. And don't forget, when you create a team mailbox, generally they're hidden from the global address list.
Okay. So Philippa, does that help you? Thank you. A DP related question. Would we need to consider that Teams holds or does not hold information? Data protection related question. Would we need to consider that Teams holds or does not hold information?
Funnily, this comes back to what we've been talking about this morning, doesn't it, Maria?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. If you're wanting to apply compliancy and governance to what Teams does or does not hold, and give yourself the capability of subsequently performing e-discovery or search against that content, there are ways and means of implementing search solutions on that basis. So from a data protection standpoint, you can actually audit and trace who has access to what specific area of data by applying custom attributes to the files in those locations. So we're not talking about DLP, we're not talking about sensitivity labels, we're talking about team-specific attributes relating to departments or generic structures that you might create under which you create a team. So there are ways and means of doing that in relation to e-discovery. However, it is really, how far's a piece of string kind of thing. It depends on what your policy is in regard of data protection and provisioning and control of the access or sharing of content. If you ever saw a presentation that we did some considerable time ago around data governance and compliance, we talked about the fact that numerous organizations implement teams and then respectively think about how content is accessed or governed once the solution's in place, but they don't think about the teams element of it. They think about SharePoint, they think about OneDrive, and they think consequently about the DLP application of governance. What Teams has done with the introduction of those sensitivity labels for DLP is it's given you a methodology by which you can now provision access not just from within the file structure itself, but directly from within the channels and conversations within those channels from which sharing could occur. We showed you in a demonstration just now the extensible features of application of sensitivity labels for DLP. So that's one way in which you need to consider what channels hold what information. Another way to control it is obviously thinking about the application of B2B provisioning, maybe, to prevent external users from accessing that data. I don't know if I've gone a long way around the houses there of answering the question, or maybe I've confused the hell out of you, quite frankly, because I confused myself at one point. Does that make sense, Philippa?
Yeah, because Donald was saying that the question applies to bit of 365. Yes, actually.
Yeah, it does, and that's what we. Funnily enough, as I say, we're working with a customer who has a similar request in regards of their team's structure, and we were trying to explain to them this morning that it depends to what extent you're wanting to control data governance. If it's data governance that is purely in the context of teams and how users access and share files from within a channel, then yes, you look specifically in focus and directly at the team's level of control. But as Donald says, and as I've said, Teams is an interface, it's an umbrella interface. So consequently, everything you do in regards of control of data governance doesn't apply just purely to Teams. In reality, it applies to every element that Teams touches upon. So it applies to SharePoint, it applies to OneDrive by extension, it applies to email and everything else.
Yeah. So Philippa saying it's similar to a portal. Also important to understand this for determining whether a DPIA is required. To be quite honest, Philippa, if you on client side, we do not just ask for a DPIA for Teams. We run DPIA for the entire platform of 365, just to be sure that you're quite thorough. Now, Massimiliano, I did not ignore you. So Massimiliano's question is, I have seen one of the new features. Is it possible the creation of new teams through templates when you use this functionality to create a new team? Can you also establish rules and features for the SharePoint site connected with that team?
So that wouldn't be done via a template. What you would do that is through a PowerShell script. So one of the things that we do, and again, I said I wasn't going to be salesy with an HPE. One of the things that we do is we have a service called Fast Start, which provisions a number of predetermined or predefined teams and associated sites when generating an out-of-the-box or greenfield solution of Teams itself. Through that scripting, you can extend the script command to also set up some of the predefined or predetermined settings for some of the background services, such as SharePoint and OneDrive. Through the template, you can't. So I think what you're asking is, can you predefine permissions? Can you set individual SharePoint-specific settings through the Teams template interface that you would normally do through PowerShell? My understanding, even with the extensible templates that have been released, is no, you can't. You've got to still do that through PowerShell. The GUI on the template itself doesn't allow you to do that.
Okay. Oh, more messages. Thank you very much, Massimiliano. Now, going back to a question that Emma earlier requested, if a recording is made of a meeting that is created through Outlook or in a one-on-one or group chat and does not relate to an MS Teams channel, will it be stored in OneDrive? If so, which individual's OneDrive would it be stored in? Now, I gave her the reference for the Microsoft reference for it, Tony. Sorry about that, because and one of the things that I found in this one is it always depends on what type of call it is and who started the call, for one, and for group settings, it's who started the recording.
Yep.
So
yeah. Don't forget at this moment in time as well. I've presented on the fact that they're moving to OneDrive and SharePoint. If you buy a tenant today, when it is provisioned and set up by Microsoft, the default setting is that it will save to OneDrive and SharePoint. If you're an existing Teams user, the default setting at this moment in time is that it will continue to utilize Stream. And it's actually an administrative policy to change it to the new setting. So you might find, if you're not administrators on this call, that you have to go back to your current managed service provider or IT administrator and ask them to investigate whether or not you should be implementing that as a default service policy for recording going forward. More messages below. Oh, sorry. It's if it's a recording that either you have instigated or that others have instigated, then it will be held in wherever their default storage repository is. So again, if the policy provision is that it's a one-to-one call that you've instigated and I record it and my policy states that it's still in Stream, I control and hold that information and that recording. It's in Stream. I can then subsequently share it from within Stream. If it's a channel recording and the policy is that it's SharePoint, then either owners of the team or administrators can consequently share that recording from within the SharePoint repository. Not every individual member can share the recording. Does that make sense?
Yep, I think everybody acknowledges that. And for Jason, do you know where the admin setting is for the recording location? Emma says thank you. Do you know where the admin setting is for the recording location?
It should be in meeting policies in the admin console. Now, as I say, that's currently in rollout at this moment in time. So if you don't see it in the admin console, in fact, if you bear with me, just keep going through, Maria, and have a look at the questions and keep reading, because I'm going to just have a look at my admin console for my demonstration tenant and see if I'm right as to where it is.
Guys, any more questions that is bugging you right now on Teams before the year ends? So that at least if it's giving you sleepless nights and nightmares, so please put it through, because I think we've answered most of the questions you have already. So any news on the breakout rooms? Oh gosh.
On breakout rooms, are you talking about Teams meeting rooms breakouts, or are you talking about?
Yeah, there's two, isn't it?
Yeah. So again, so they've extended the functionality within Teams meeting rooms, and breakouts are part of that. And again, that's an upcoming feature. It's not something that I don't think is in general availability as of October.
Oh,
which
it's
was
just
when the next.
still in preview.
Yeah, I think it's still in preview for Teams meeting rooms.
So Jason was saying, I think it's being released in November. Really depends probably on where your
On
tenant
your ring.
sits.
Yeah. So it depends on the release ring in which you're in, and it's relevant to Teams meeting rooms. It's an extendable feature of Teams meeting rooms. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm just not being rude. I'm just having a look at my admin console just to make sure in regards to the recording policy.
Guys, any more? Does everybody have their chats and settings in Teams? Pretty much. Breakout rooms available for live events too. Yes, they are. Tony, aren't they? I've seen this feature when we have live events. Yes, they are, Emma.
Yes. Yep.
The breakout rooms are in live events, especially for live events because of the type of target audience that you're trying to get to.
Yeah. Sorry. Again, I'm not being rude. I'm just trying to find the recording section.
Guys, I was going to say that this session is being recorded, and we are going to make the recording available on the IRMS YouTube channel. There's a lot of messages that I received from some of the guys who are not able to attend this session. So if you watch out for that, but as an attendee, you will be given the link to that, directly to that link of the video from Livestorm. However, if you for some reason forgotten to access that within a couple of weeks, then what we're going to do is we've got a team in IRMS who will upload it to the IRMS YouTube channel, so you could watch it again and try to refresh yourself with the things that Tony presented. Again, if you wish to contact Tony directly, it's Nunn, Nunn, at hpe.com. So we're just waiting for you to answer, Jason.
I'm still looking because I thought it was in the meeting policies. And again, as I say, by the looks of it, they haven't put it in my test tenant as yet. So I'm probably not on that release ring as yet. Yeah, so unfortunately, because the tenant I'm looking at, I can't find the area in the admin console, Jason. Otherwise, I'd tell you. If you drop me an email with your contact details, I'll send you an email with the area in which it's in.
Okay, Jason, is that okay?
No problems, Jason. Yeah.
Okay, guys, if there are no more questions, I'll give you 5 more minutes for any more questions. Then after that, I would say thank you to Tony. So Kate says this has been really helpful. Oh, that's good feedback, Kate. I hope it helps you with your.
Hope it's been of value.
Yeah, with your Aberdeenshire implementation. I know Teams has been well. It's right now. It's our default setting, isn't it? Because of the way we work now, we are really highly dependent on Teams. Yep.
The question about breakout rooms, just looking in my file, they're actually supposed to be released in whole, and it's not just to Teams meeting rooms. It's actually coming for end users on the desktop client as well, and they're supposed to be in general availability before the end of November. And apparently, it's up to 50 breakout rooms you can generate.
Oh, wow. So guys, that's something to watch out for, the breakout rooms. And Melody's also saying, thanks, Tony. You make it all very understandable and explain it well. Very helpful.
Happy to
Thank you,
be of
Melody.
use.
Thank you, Melody. So, guys, I think that's it for us. And everybody, have a lovely afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you, Agard. Wherever you are in the world, have a lovely time.
And yes, wishing you all a very early Merry Christmas.
Thank
Thanks, guys.
you.